In the early days of his campaign against the New Republic, Grand Admiral Thrawn conducted a raid against the extensive information libraries of the planet Obra Sky. Following the successful raid, Thrawn's scout forces were pursued on their return to his flagship, the Chimera, leading to a battle between the Chimera on one side and 4 assault frigates, a type of modified dreadnought heavy cruiser, on the other. The importance of this battle is more out-of-universe than in-universe. In-universe, it does signify increased activity by Thrawn leading into his full campaign, but it had already been preceded by other similar raids by Imperial forces on systems like Drauki's. Out-of-universe, this battle has 3 main points of significance. The first of which being that this battle was the opening scene of the Thrawn Trilogy, which really lit a fire under what we now know as the Star Wars Expanded Universe. In the battle itself, the scout ships used on the raid were able to safely return to the Chimera. Thrawn then deployed 3 sentries to assess the enemy forces. In my animation, I used TIE fighters for this since it was an asset I had available, and since it's also what the official Thrawn Trilogy comic adaptation used. However, if you look at how they're described and used in the books, these sentries were likely cheaper and unmanned, more akin to probe droids used in The Empire Strikes Back on Hoth. Once he had seen how the enemy forces acted when destroying one of the sentries, the remaining 2 from that trio and other nearby sentries were called back. Just through this response, Thrawn was able to determine that the task force was being led by an Illumin. With this new information, Thrawn began ordering the rotation of the Chimera to place the superstructure side towards the assault frigate and the hangar bay away. The starfighters were then able to fly out with cover of the bulky Star Destroyer before coming in to make their attack run using the unstructured attack profile of the Marg Sable closure maneuver, which Thrawn's study of the Illumin's art told him they would have no effective counter for. In the course of an hour, Thrawn's forces were able to completely eliminate the enemy task force. Now, this was the first time we see Thrawn's art inspiration in practice, which is the second of the 3 important points for this battle. It is frankly not a part of the Thrawn trilogy I'm particularly fond of, and results in some weird pan-species traits, not to mention relying on a lot of assumptions about what the enemy's force composition was. For example, how does Thrawn know that it's just an Illumin in charge of the task force? While it's true that sometimes a planet's defense forces would be just made up of one species, a lot of times the New Republic fleets were made up of multiple species working together. Regardless, this does have a significant impact on both the Thrawn trilogy as a whole, as well as other places throughout Star Wars which involve Thrawn. The third and final important point for this battle is that, in my reading, what has become the common understanding and usage of the Marg Sable maneuver is actually the wrong part of the maneuver Thrawn uses. In the broader fandom, Marg Sable has basically come to be shorthand for how Thrawn rotates the ship to cover the fighter movement as well as the fighter movement afterwards, and this gets reinforced by the usage of the Marg Sable maneuver in the Clone Wars, where the tactic is used by Ahsoka. Because of these 2 appearances, this may actually be the most prominent maneuver used in Star Wars, but from my reading, the ship orientation is actually an element Thrawn adds on top of the standard Marg Sable, rather than being an inherent part of the maneuver itself. The maneuver is called the Marg Sable closure maneuver by Pellaeon, referring to the unstructured way the fighters and bombers moved in after their launch. When discussing the situation with Thrawn, Pellaeon specifically says, "I see now that the reason you turned the ship was to give the fighters some exit cover, but the rest is nothing but a classic Marg Sable closure maneuver." This description of it, particularly the usage of "but the rest" to refer to the Marg Sable, shows Pellaeon is aware of the term and the maneuver itself, which heavily implies to me that this was not the standard execution of the maneuver, and instead was an extra bit of Thrawn's tactical skill coming out knowing that he was at a numerical disadvantage. This has definitely shifted over time, at least in fan perceptions, and then with its usage in the Clone Wars, where it does use the entire part of Thrawn's maneuver, and there's plenty of things in Star Wars that develop that way. There's always room for reinterpretations of it. I just think it's interesting to track how some of these things develop, and that this may not have been the original intent behind it. Maybe I'm just interpreting it differently though. I'll try to post the context in the comments as well for anyone who may not have read the book before to make their own judgment. Either way, that's going to do it for today's battle breakdown. As you've seen in the clips throughout this video, I did do a short animation of the major parts of this battle, which will be linked in a standalone form in the description as well as in the cards. This was the first real battle I've tried to do with actual ship movement, explosions, firing, rather than simply being fleet shots, so there's definitely a lot I want to improve on, and some I think I already did improve on for the second video covering Orinda, which will have another video breaking down in a couple of days. I'll also be working to improve the breakdown graphics used in this video with each each new one as well. I'll continue to post the animated lore battles here on Datapad, but this week I also started a clips channel which I'll link in the description too, where I'll be posting some of those animations along with a plethora of other 60-second or shorter content which I don't want to automatically clog your subscription with here or on my dedicated gaming channel related to both Star Wars lore and gaming. So give that a look if you're interested in more content. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.